I am continuing my reading. In this series, I'm reading through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order according to events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be jumping around a bit. I have already read the first portion of the Earth's history, consisting of Genesis in the Bible, as well as the first portion of Exodus. I've also read Moses and Abraham from the Pearl of Great Price, and a portion of Ether from the Book of Mormon. I am now in Job because his story takes place sometime between the events of Genesis and Exodus. So I am inserting his story here. Right now I am in chapter 2, and this chapter does have a Joseph Smith translation in it, and the Joseph Smith translation is an inspired correction or translation of the Bible done by Joseph Smith to restore those portions that had been lost over the years. So let us get into this chapter. This is Job chapter 2. Satan obtains leave from the Lord to afflict Job physically. He is smitten with boils. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar come to comfort him. Okay. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, of course, these first two chapters we understand as a prologue to a literary work, most likely a play, an epic poem play that would be performed by an audience. So the idea of Satan being there having this conversation with God fits if we understand it to be the literary license of the author to set up the story as a prologue. There is, in this one verse, a Joseph Smith translation where he changes the term sons of God to the term children of God. So, now, we are done there. Let us continue. Verse 2. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord, and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God, and escheweth evil. And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord, and said, Skin for skin. Yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. Okay, we have the same setup as we did in the first chapter. Sons of God having a little meeting with God. Satan comes, and God calls him out. And he says, well, have you considered Job? Look, in the first chapters, have you considered Job? He's a great guy. And Satan said, yeah, but he's a great guy because you've blessed him so much. You take all of his stuff away, and he'll curse you. He'll turn against you. And God said, well, take it all away, but don't touch him. And so he took it all away. Now he's saying, same setup. What you doing? What have you been up to? Satan says, well, I've been around there. Well, have you considered Job? Look at that. I destroyed everything that he had, and he has not turned against me. What do you think about that? And Satan says, well, you didn't do anything to him. Now, if you smack him around a bit personally, then he'll turn against you. And God says, well, let's see. And he says, go, but don't kill him. Do anything else, but don't kill him. Okay. I will also point out, in verse 3, it says, although thou movest me against him. So was it Satan that was actually doing these things? Or was it God? It sounds like God is giving Satan leave to do this stuff to Job. But then God is taking the credit for it. Just an interesting little dynamic there. Is God blaming himself for letting Satan do this? Again, literary license here, you got to keep that in mind. But what is the author saying here? That with Job, more than anything, you have to ask what the author's intention is. It's not necessarily what God is doing or what Satan is doing. It is what the author is trying to tell us. It is still scripture. But I think what the author is saying, and I think it's very interesting, that the author is saying God lets things happen. He doesn't necessarily cause them, but he lets them happen. And in doing so, being a loving father, he feels the pain. And he says, I want to stop this, but I can't. This has to happen. But, you know, he was, according to the author, he was protecting Job, and he withdrew that protection for a purpose, even though it was unjust, even though there was no cause for it. He had to withdraw his protection, and he felt, don't get me wrong, I don't think he felt guilt. No, he felt the pain that Job was going through. He had compassion. He knew what was happening, but he knew he couldn't interfere. He knew this had to happen. And I like that portrayal of God here. So, but let us continue. Verse 7. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of the Lord, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. Okay, a few minor things here. So, boils and sores. From the sole of his foot unto his crown, meaning his entire body is covered. And boils, they are not only, they're very painful. And if you don't have proper medical treatment, the only way to treat a boil is that he would get a potsherd and scrape his skin, because a boil is not just a lump. It is a painful lump that kind of oozes. And so he would kind of clean himself, but also scrape and try to get rid of, it's like something under the skin. And it's just horrible. And the only way to get rid of them, if you don't have proper medical treatment, is to literally scrape them or squeeze them until whatever's under the skin comes out. Very disgusting stuff. My brother had a boil, and it was so painful that it took 5 people to hold him down while my mother got rid of it. And to this day, he still has a indent in his leg where it used to be because of how bad this was. So the idea that Job is just covered head to foot in this stuff it's just horrible. And yet, he does not turn against God. So, let us continue this here. Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all his evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Taamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent every one his mantle, and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. So they came to mourn with him, but couldn't recognize him because of all the boils and sores. And then they sat down for a full week with nobody talking, because the grief was just too great. There was just too much sorrow there for words. Now, I do want to point out one last thing. It says, in all this, sin not Job with his lips. This is also setting up for what comes later in the story. It is part of the prologue to set up the main point of the book. So we will get into that in the next one.